The skill challenge is finally here. Enjoy the lowest profit targets in the industry through our skill challenge, which is only requiring a 6% profit target. Yes, you heard that right. Not only that, but enjoy 85% profit split on your account, as well as a 125% challenge fee refund, all part of the best product on the market. You get to choose your drawdown between 8 to 10% through our toggle option. So choose how much drawdown you'd like. Take advantage of the skill challenge today.
All right, welcome back, everybody. This is another episode of Trader Roundup, and this is Funded Fridays. We got our good friend Dan over here, and none other than Omar, the co-founder of SFT. So today we have a bit of a different episode. So I brought Dan in because I know that he's a very successful entrepreneur, businessman, and trader. So what we wanted to talk about is how to leverage other people's money, and that's essentially what this prop space is about. So from my background, right, I was in construction. Leveraging other people's money is so important in how these wealthy people operate, because when you're using your own capital, right, you're taking that personal liability on for yourself. So something that we used to do in our development was a contract called the cost plus, where you would commit to a price of the home, and anything that went over budget, the client would fund. Right. So the contractor, we were never accepting any of that personal liability. Whereas a stipulated sum contract, right, you agree to an amount, and then anything over, the contractor has to pay. So, from that perspective, we were always trying to leverage other people's money, not our own, because it kind of puts us in a sticky situation where, right, you're accepting that liability. So what are your perspectives? I mean, how did you kind of, did you have any mentors that were kind of leading you in through real estate or anything like that, to learn how to leverage other people's money, right? Because in real estate, we know that's a big game. How to leverage other people's money properly, though.
Yeah. That's true. Thanks for the warm welcome and nice words, my man Kyle. But I think just to kind of start off before we even touch base on leveraging money, it's like leveraging money or using other people's money is a very important factor, full stop. But it comes with a lot of risk, right? Because it's other people's money. Don't go after watching this and get inspired and go try and borrow 100 million or 1 million from anyone if they're willing to give it to you and just spank it on crypto, on Dogecoin or something, as Kyle would say. But realistically, the thing is, you have to have a proven plan. If you have a proven plan, then getting money is absolutely easy. Trading is exactly the same thing, right? If you actually have the skill set to trade, this is the thing with the problem. People think money is the problem, but it's not. It's the skill set. If you have the skill set, anyone's willing to give you money. Prop is give, retail, institutional, hedge fund, private equity, you name it. It's all the same thing. They're just money with money. Now, the number one thing about OPM or other people's money, and this is I learned from one of my friends, is, and I'll go into how I kind of learned all of this, is at the end of the day, rich people, wealthy people, or even let's say yourself at any current level, you will have money. They will always have money that they need to make more. You're only one individual. And there's only so much I can do. There's only so much Omar, Carl, just an individual person can do. Then you need to have a team. Then bar a team, you want money working for you. So if you think about money working for you, you start using like Vanguard, you have your S&P, you have diversification of money and diversification of wealth. This is exactly the same reason as why people would want to invest in the individuals such as myself, you, or anyone else, because you have the skill to multiply their income and then you can re-diversify that as well. Now, this also ties into a very important factor, is you must have heard it, is your network is your net worth. And that is a very interesting fact, is because, say, for example, right, I have a fund or I'm an individual. The fund is just a diversification, right? A diversification in multiple different assets. Someone gives me 100 million. I've got 100 million. I'm not going to go put 100 million on one thing, you know what I mean, on Dogecoin or whatever, and all that kind of stuff. I say Dogecoin because Kyle always laughs at me for it. But even in real estate, right, if I have 100 million in real estate and that is 100% of my equity, I'm not diversified across the board, because if the real estate market crashes, if I get void periods, if we have money locked up, banks starts taking back money, or governments have different processes on different things, that just takes all of my basket away. So it goes to the traditional saying of don't have your eggs all in one basket. So that's just to kind of get a very, very basic fundamental understanding. Is understand first your risk, and then understand, diversify your money, and have the skill to kind of be able to use OPM. Now, the power of other people's money is absolutely amazing. And because we're obviously on this podcast, we can use prop as an industry, right? Or the retail prop, as I like to call it. And to have, like, I watched that advert just a second ago. It's like 6% target and 8% target on the SFT, and you get that and you pass. But think about it. Like, if you truly just take a step back, I just actually had a review with FTMO and looking at the performance, and had a mentorship guide as well. And it's like, if you actually take the longevity approach, if you used other people's money and if you actually had the skill set, you'd be able to leverage and make so much more. I understand that 2% is not a lot of money if you have $1,000 account, but if you start thinking in millions, if you start thinking outside the box and start going higher, that is where real wealth and real good money comes. And also the risk is much lower as well. So there's loads of benefits to using OPM. There's obviously loads of risk involved, but you have to understand the borderline and the baseline, what you want to do, how you're going to diversify it, and what is the risk that entails. So it's like a little bit of a basic summary of how that works.
Yeah. So like, what would be your advice to somebody that's trying to leverage other people's money? Because we saw it in 08, right? All these people were trying to leverage the bank's money to buy a home that they really couldn't afford. Right?
Yes.
And that's the same thing with, I would say, trading, investing, business in general, is everybody gets this greed factor where it's like, no, I want more money. You know, I want a bigger house. I want, you know, bigger and nicer things. And then they find themselves in over their head, right? And they can't manage that, right? What happens? I'd say what are the biggest, you know, pieces of advice that you could give to somebody that's looking to go along that route of trying to maybe take their small amount of capital and leverage that into something bigger?
Oof. So there's quite a lot into this, because there's a very tough thing that's directly correlated. Is basically, as the saying goes, as you earn more, your living standards go up. So if you earn 100k, you start spending 100k or 50k or whatever it is. You do 500k, you start spending 250k. Everything starts going up. This ties in very much with the greed factor, because as you start leveraging other people's money and you're making money, that's great, that's good. It's just like trading. You're in a good zone, you're making money, markets are killing it, you're getting that money, you're making it work. It's good. That's easy. The biggest thing I would kind of say is you got to understand and look from a very professional point of view of exposure. And that yet again goes into the, you know, your risk factor. It's like your exposure. What am I exposed to? And back in 08, the biggest reasons obviously is because they were lending money like no tomorrow. They were buying houses with obviously no deposits down and all of this credit problems with it as well. And people were taking advantage of it, but people were taking advantage of it of not knowing the exposure. And the exposure is if they come back and claim this, I can't pay it back, then they've lost their assets and lost their wealth. So you have to know your exposure. So just to kind of give a little tips, or like something that I'm thinking of at the moment, is we have this one business. This one business has, say, like 10 million that's in there at the moment, and we're exposed to 5 million on the back of it. We weren't liquid at the start, and not everyone's able to be liquid from the start, right? Because you've got to make your profit margins, you've got to grow the business, whatever it is. But you always want to try and get to the point where you're liquid and have a very fair balance of understanding that if anything happens, I can afford to pay it, not be in a position where they could take any assets away from me, and also understand that if, like, I'm using other people's leverage, they can come back at any time and get that money back. I'm also liquid enough to pay them. But the problem is, instead of, you know, a lot of times I've seen in other businesses and learned within my circle is, say you're 10 million and then you're netting, they're literally using everything they have to throw it back into the business and grow and grow and grow, or trying to use more money to grow and grow and grow and grow. And they're trying to chase that growth factor. And because they're trying to chase that growth factor, yet again, the exposure and the risk is mitigated. And then when something does happen, they're not able to recover, and then that's where real problems can happen. And that's the same with trading, right? If we talk about the leverage from that, it's just like you start overexposing on one trade or market or condition, you start getting overconfident, you go in and go in and go in, everything blows, your risk to zero. So, you know, I know for you, like you trade all your accounts all in one go. So that's fine. That's cool. But I like to rotate my accounts, because then it's risk factors. Because say I get one, and I've explained this to you before, I get a payout, I rotate to another, because you have to wait a little bit of time unless it's like King's programs or whatever, right? But still, now one of I have at the moment, FTMO is passed, and that's parked. Now I leverage that. Then I go on to another one, move it, and that's a fine way of looking at exposure. Now, yes, I could make more by linking them all. Yes, I could probably make or lower the risk, which is what you've done, right? So then you don't blow the accounts. There's many different ways. It's all about exposure. people focus on how much they can make as opposed to how much they can lose. Losing is so important because that can really, really mess with you in the long run.
I think people don't really look at exposure like how you're talking about it. And I want to get Omar's perspective, right? Because we actually talked about this in the insurance industry, right? Essentially, I would say the insurance industry is very much like the prop model, right? Where your net inflows are way more than what your net outflows are, right? Because most people are not going to claim insurance policies or make a claim on that insurance policy throughout the year, right? So, like, what was the exposure in the insurance industry? And I guess essentially you really are leveraging other people's money to run your business.
Yeah, and like to Dan's point about like, essentially just kind of like it's really when it comes down to like trading, right, where people sometimes put on too much risk on a specific trade. It's this just goes for everything, like in life, business, is like not over leveraging on one specific thing. Like even like on a business idea, making sure like, you know, how to properly manage the money, making sure not to like put too much money into one idea or whatever it may be, because at the end of the day, whatever industry you're going to be in, you have to really be mindful of, like, you don't want to be put in a position where like one decision can essentially ruin your business or ruin your trading account.
Yeah,
right?
Essentially bankrupt you, right?
Exactly. And relating it back to trading, like imagine, this is why I think the risk of ruin with trading is like so high, is because, you know, over the long span of a year, right? Ultimately, like, you know, as traders, like we have to kind of we just have to be there. Like Tom Dante talks about it all the time. Like you just have to be there most of the times as a trader. The problem is when you put too much money into like one specific trade. Not saying that sometimes maybe you can't size up a little bit more on specific trades if it has more of an edge. But when someone risks like, you know, 20%, you know, and instead of looking at it from the long perspective, and I know Dan alluded to it earlier about, you know, just having lower risk, because those smaller risk percentages make so much of a difference when you're able to leverage other people's capital, right? Because 2% sounds nothing on $1,000 account because it's only $200, but 2% on $1 million is $20,000, you know? So that's, it's all relative. So to Dan, I had a quick question, right? So I know, obviously, you know, you've been able to be pretty successful outside of trading, right? I want you to kind of give the audience a little bit of an insight on how someone who's maybe in that profitable stage and doesn't know how to kind of like, all right, how else should I now leverage the profits that they're making, whether it's from a firm, whether it's from personal capital, like what's that first initial step that maybe you took when you were starting to make a little bit of money and then leveraging it into, like, I know you're big on real estate. Like what's kind of like that gap in between on how someone can actually get started, you know, they can start like getting their feet wet a little bit.
So I think the easiest, there's a saying in Chinese, right? And it's called Shu Zhong Jia Wang Gam O, and that means in the middle of a book, you can get the gold. And the simple factor is, I know this may sound so backwards, is to buy these books. Because at the end of the day, if we want to say we want to go speak to Warren Buffett, Ray Dalio, like Tom Dudley, like whoever, we're not going to have an opportunity just to roll up and be like, yo, Wagwan, you know what I mean? Like, Warren, let's go get some Coke. But they have books on this. And, you know, 7 Steps to Financial Freedom from Tony Robbins, a great example, shows you how you can diversify your portfolio into looking for an all-weather portfolio, looking into tips, government-backed bonds, and how much you should allocate your percentages, how business cycle works. When business cycle works, interest rates are higher at the moment, but lending is also better. So that means people with money are getting higher percentages. Yes, it's harder to get lending from the bank, but also me as an individual who has money, I can lend that out and get a nice return.
Yeah.
So
even government-backed bonds, right? Like, just park your money in there.
Treasury bonds.
Yeah, exactly.
Tips is one of the biggest things, right? In America, you can have one of those. Stocks and shares ISAs, you've got 400k. You've got so many different things that you can look at. So the first thing you have to do is to educate yourself. And the easiest way to educate yourself, I know it's easy just to say educate myself, is Google what to do with my money, and then buy these books, and then find all of these books and find what works for you. Now, real estate is great for me and it's worked for me, but it's not for everyone. But then also I have diversification. It's just simple S&P 500, right? The fundamental of the S&P 500 or Vanguard 500, who obviously is Ray Dalio, right, is their top 500 companies of the country, right? So if it's shit, they knock them out, put a new one in. That has performed time and time again. It baffles me that not enough people dollar cost average into these indices, because these are performing. As traders, we're trying to outperform that S&P, but instead of thinking I'm going to outperform them, I'm going to trade my way and invest in them. And then that's already 2 pots. Then you've got bonds, that's another pot. Then you've got real estate, that's another pot. Then you just diversify, because otherwise you are always constantly trading time for money. Yes, you can earn a lot, and yes, that's fine. But you know, when you have a bigger cause where you have family, kids, and all that stuff, and it's bigger than you, if you go, that income is gone. If you don't have something passively set up, that is not going to support your family. And I don't expect there's no disrespect to my wife, and I love my wife. She's an amazing mum, and she can do many things that I couldn't do, but I can't expect her to come in and earn what I earn and do what I
likewise.
do. Do you know what I mean? It's just we're 2 different people with 2 different goals and 2 different things. And she brings that family and home orientated, and I bring in the bread, and she's able to live comfortably and happy. So it's important to leave that legacy behind. So the first step is to educate and understand how money is distributed, and then ironically, then that can go into like the whole topic of this as well. It's like OPM, like using other people's money to the private equity to perform. Because if we relate this to trading, you've got a track record of a year. I guarantee you, if you have a track record to 1 to 3 years, you can go to any hedge fund, you can go to any investor and be like, look, I've proven this with 10K. I've made 10% a year for a year to 3 years. Would you give me 100 or $1 million, and I'll prove it, and then you can scale up from there. So it's all about, you know, really looking at the bigger picture, looking at the longevity, and just really understanding like, okay, what do I want to build? Who do I want to become? And looking at the bigger picture as an overall.
Yeah. So I guess going back to like the beginnings, you know, I watched your podcast with Albie the other day.
Appreciate it.
You got humble beginnings. Me, likewise, like when I was, you know, I guess earlier in my years, I didn't have like as much as an opportunity to diversify. I think so many people are really stuck in that rat race pattern where they're like, they have to put everything all in one basket. So like what is your advice to somebody that, so
great answer.
in my opinion, right? Like, because I came from an industry where the people that were getting paid the most, and I think I might have talked about this with Kimmel, the people that were getting paid the most in that industry were the specialists, right? It wasn't the general contractor that was doing tile, trim, roofing, you know, plumbing. Like it was the guy that would only do trim, you know, it was the guy that would only do cabinets, right? So in my opinion, I think, like, what is your advice to somebody that's just getting started? Like, do you recommend them to just go all in on something that is going to pay them the most, right? Because I think a lot of people probably are trying to diversify too early, and now, right, they become a jack of all trades and a master of none.
So I'm going to use, this is a great question. I think hopefully this answer really enlightens people. I'm going to use a postman as an example, because this was actually from a book. And the idea was basically there was this guy who was earning $14,000 a year. And that's not you know, it's not a lot of money in my personal opinion for what he's done. But what he was able to do is dot a cost average every single month and put that money away. And then over a 20-year period, that money then ended up becoming $1 million. So the whole point is of that, the moral of that story is, it doesn't matter how much you earn. It's actually first to start with your mindset, and then number 2 is actually your spending habits and you as an overall, as an individual. Because you can earn 100,000, but if you're net spending 120, you're already negative 20. But if you're earning 10,000 and you're only spending 5,000, you're net up 5,000. So you're actually better positioned than the 120 earner. So first, let's understand, it doesn't matter how much you earn. That is got no direct correlation to wealth, because I know I'm about mindset and everything. You are wealthy before you even become wealthy, because you actually have to, you know, imagination is the preview to the coming attraction. So you actually have to see it before you believe it. And it's so powerful. And once you see that, then you start making small implementations. All right, let's say you got $20,000. Cool. What is your mortgage? What is your breakdown? What is your in and out? We had this conversation before, Kyle, right? Like, how many of you are so clean and cut and understand your ins and outs to a business degree? Where is my money going? Why is my bills gone up? Okay, my bills have gone up. How much does it cost per minute? What is all of that? When you're at such a low income level and bracket and you want to increase more, you need to know where everything is going so you can put money to use. If you don't do that, you're just going to be stuck paycheck to paycheck to paycheck, life to life. And then you just spend 75 years just living a dream that you like, just living in your head, you know.
Yeah, you're kind of stuck in the matrix, right?
Exactly. So you need to first identify everything across the board, no matter what level you're on. Number 2 is the richest man in Babylon. It's the most important thing ever. 10%. If you just put 10%, that's the rule he has. If you put 10% of your wealth away, think about how much money you would have. A prime example is a great question. You know, I was at this event, was how much have you earned in your life? Like your lifetime from right now, ask yourself, like, how much have I earned up to this day? It could be a million, could be a couple of 100K, could be whatever. Where the fuck is your money? If you just put 10% of that money into a house, that house is now generating 1K a month. You've got now 1K a month, one house, and then the capital appreciation of that one property. Then you keep putting 10% away in a year's time. So even if you put $500 away, that's $6,000 at the end of the year. Okay, $6,000, right? You can put that into, you know, a deposit. You can put it into an Airbnb and get a rental contract. You can use that as, instead, same again, using a, like leverage. I can then go into this Airbnb and be like, look, I want to rent this property, and then take on that and then have low void periods and then re-rent it out, because Airbnb is a massive industry. Then you've got 6K as your buffer to fail, and you can grow that business. Do you know what I mean? But the failure of wealth is not earning more, because earning more is not going to make you more money. Is the spending habits, understanding yourself to the ins and outs, to the T, and also saving your money and then reinvesting your money as an overall. You have to have the intent, the mindset, and then the actions to back what you're going to say. Because it's all fine me telling you and all fine everyone agreeing, but the real issue is people don't actually do what they're going to say. It's hard.
Yeah,
I get it.
I think the hardest part is like the mindset shift, right? Because when you start making more money, you're instantly. I mean, for me personally, I instantly try and go to like short-term pleasure, right? So like, and most of those things are just they're liabilities, right? Maybe it's a vacation, maybe it's something materialistic, right? Instead of paying for a cash flowing asset or investing in another business, right, which are long-term things, you need to have a plan in place, right? Most people are just getting that, I guess, you know, that dopamine hit from paying for those liabilities, right? And then they get buyer's remorse, and it's just a vicious cycle. You know, it's like, I want this thing. It's a nice shiny object. I'm going to pay for it, and then all of a sudden I'm regretting it. You know, down the road. But you have to understand, like, yes, you can accumulate assets and still, I guess, please that short-term dopamine hit, as long as it's like a, you know, reasonable purchase or something that is going to pay you in the future.
But I like on that, I think it's like you've got to delay gratification. Like if you can't train yourself to have delayed gratification, you're not going to get anywhere in life. And
that's the hardest thing. It really is.
Yeah, but the problem is because everything is instant. You get instant messaging, instant love, instant conversations, instant YouTube, instant dopamine, instant oxytocin, instant loads of different things. And that's okay. That's the society we live in. I don't want to bash on it and say, look, we need to go blue screen and just hide away. No, you know what I mean? It's not, that's the case. It's a balance. Everything's about the yin and the yang and the balances overall. And I actually wrote this in my journal recently, is what you said. You've got to, and one thing that can help you, because I'm, as much as it's easy for me to say these things and I'm doing them and, you know, yada, 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 it's great to try and give some more relatable stuff. Now, every time you're about to make a decision, think about the future. If you make that decision right now, how is that going to affect your future? If you really, really make a conscious effort to do this, your life is going to change. Prime example, you take a trade. This is a trade I shouldn't be taking, but you think about the future. Well, this is going to, how, if I take this trade, it's not going to affect me now, because I could have an extra loss or an extra lose or win, or it's an overtrade, doesn't matter. But in the future, that's going to be bad habits. It's going to do something in the future where I do it again. I could blow my account. I could over leverage. I could do many different things. Shiny object or the vacation, right? You go to the vacation. Okay, cool. But I'm now $4 grand down. If I'm $5 grand down, 4-5 grand down, that could have been a, you know, an extra 4-5 grand into my trading account, 20% a year. That's another grand. You know, in 10 years time, if I start compounding all of that up, that's another 10 grand on top. That's only if I'm doing $1 grand per year, and that's compounded, not even compound, if that makes sense. So if you start really thinking about the future, you will stop making really stupid decisions. Like, you know, I had this conversation with, you know, Artan recently. It's like smoking weed, all right, bunning a weed, getting high and all that kind of stuff. That is fine. If you want to do that, that's cool. But the problem is with that, and I don't have anything against it, I just find it puts you way too much in a comfortable state. And as a man, as an individual who's trying to be high performance in all areas of my life, if you are comfortable, you slack. And when you slack, you become lazy. When you're lazy, you create bad habits. When you have bad habits, you create bad fucking thought process and bad things. And then you go down a spiral. So you want to set yourself up to go the other direction. So think to yourself, what am I doing right now and how is this affecting my future? I don't want to go to that gym session. I go now, but at least next week I'll feel good and I'll look good. I'm not supposed to take this trade, and I'm not going to do it because I know that this is going to instill great habits and I'm going to be a long-term trader and have the profits. I'm going to save that extra $100 today. I'm not going to go out and buy, you know, comfort food because I feel crap and I feel shit. Instead, I'm going to pray and I'm going to understand and look in the future and understand this is who I'm going to become, and it's going to be worth it, because when you're at that moment, that triumphs absolutely all the vacations and everything you've done, because you'll forget about all that shit that in that instant moment anyway. But that long-term fulfillment is for life. Like, that's for life.
Like something you mentioned too that I think, and you guys can touch on this, you guys all have significant others, right? Like my friend Matt Mickey, shout out to him. He said, you know, if you're gonna make an important decision, you should ask your wife or your significant other first. I find that my wife like always puts me in, or at least makes me think twice about something before I do it, right? Like I'm very impulsive. I think men in general are just impulsive. You know, it's like I tell her, oh, I'm up X amount this week. You know, I should probably stop. And then she sees me on my desk. She's like, what are you doing? You know, or she'll just say, you know, we should be doing this. It's, I guess from the female perspective, they're just way more logical about, you know, decision making, and they're much more level headed. They're not as impulsive. Like, do you think that's something that kind of helped you in your journey, is having somebody to lean on and ask them like, hey, is this a good decision or not?
I'll let you go first, Omar.
Well, I make bad decisions all the time, so no, but it is, you know, it's that accountability, because one thing that I've kind of and I spoke with a lot of people who have kids as well, and a lot of them, and going into like our age right now, because I'm 28, a lot of like friends and stuff like that, they starting to have kids, so I'm able to kind of see a shift in some people's mentality when they have that accountability, right? Because, and it's just like trading too. Like Kyle and I have talked about it multiple times, where like we would probably trade better, make more money if we had an accountability partner. If you talk to like the brick and mortar prop shops like S&B Capital, they have accountability partners. And I think it's just a human thing where like when you have someone who you're accountable to, because everyone likes, you know, like everyone wants to assume that like, oh yeah, just me being self-sufficient, me being accountable to myself and having this mindset. It's just not how it works. Like, you know, even in like different industries, people work better collaboratively, all right, when you have someone who you're accountable for. So whether that's a significant other, like Kyle was bringing up, who you can kind of talk with, and someone who's a little bit more logical, or maybe someone that's dependent on you. Like I know Dan, you referenced how, you know, your wife, like you're essentially the earner, you know, like everyone has their roles, and you know, it's, you have an obligation to her and you have an obligation as well to your child, that, hey, you know what, I have to provide for them. So then you could make a little bit, it's, when you're someone who's selfless, it'll be easier to make those better decisions, knowing, hey, if I'm going to make this business decision, if I'm going to make this financial decision, it's going to affect not only me, but it's going to affect my wife, my partner. It's going to affect my children. It might affect my other family members. So I think it's very important for like people to have an accountability partner, whether it's someone, ideally it would be someone who, like, you know, that you care for, like, you know, a child, or like if you take care of like your wife or husband, because that's ultimately going to allow the individual to really make proper decisions. Because most times for someone who's selfless, right? Like if you make a bad trading decision and you're single and you're by yourself, you're like, oh, whatever, it is what it is. But if you're making a bad trading decision, or you're making a bad business decision that's putting your family in jeopardy, you might think twice, you know? So I think it's very important that people do have some sort of an accountability partner. They run things by like a partner, like Kyle was saying earlier, to kind of get that second perspective, because sometimes, you know, our perspective could just be wrong, you know.
I think that's really, really good point. There's quite a few really good points you touched on I want to add to, but I think the first thing is, in a weird way, this world, we kind of, a lot of people think people are selfish, but the truth is, deep down in our soul, we are actually all very selfless. Because if you think about it, think about how good you feel when you help other people. That feeling lasts forever. I've just helped an old lady up the stairs with carrying her luggage, because just all of these things, and we're built like that. I say dicks are universal. They don't come in one race or kind, but there's a very, very small percentage of them. The rest of the world are all really nice people. And this now leads on to what you said, is just like that, when you're doing it for other people, because listen, if I was to, you know, if let myself down, it's very easy to let myself down. I could easily skip a gym session. I can easily not go, like you said, like go whatever. But if I'm doing it for my son, if I'm doing it for my friend, I'm not gonna miss the gym if my friend's lives depend on it, or he's gonna get fat because I didn't go gym, right? Because then that's a testimonial to myself, is because not only am I disrespecting myself now, I'm disrespecting him and disrespecting other people. So when you do it for other people, life becomes a much bigger picture, and there's reasons for way more. But going back to the original start of the question, Carl, is yes, my wife is my wife for a reason. I love her, been with her for 10 years, and she is biggest reason I will always love her and cherish her and give her the best life, is because she was with me when I had nothing, and I think you understand that as well. And you know, people can very be there very quickly when you're at the up, but where are you at this, right? I'm not saying that a lot of people wouldn't be there, but at that time a lot of people weren't there. So at the up, she understands what all of this was like, you know, the come up, the struggles and things like that. And realistically for her, I think women are just so much more risk adverse. They understand what we're trying to do, they understand what we're trying to build, they understand what's going on, but they are just so differently inclined. Because if it was up to them, they'd go for a safer option. We just have a home, we can live in a, you know, they always say live in a smaller house, we can save on nappies, we can save on different things. But we're like, no, we're the best of the best, let's go.
That's the thing. I guess the hard part is like men are so stubborn. It's like, I'm gonna do it this way. I actually just watched a trading documentary. I think it was from like the 70s. It was with John Rambo Moulton. I guess one of his, colleagues. They interviewed his wife, right? And she's just sitting in this like multi-million-dollar mansion, and she's like, yeah, any given day we could lose all of this. And she was like 100% okay with it. And this guy was just like, his P&L was swinging like hundreds of thousands every day, and then she's just like okay with it. So at the end of the day, really, it is I guess it's hard because men are so stubborn, and like, yes, you might get this advice from this one person, like even if I reach out to Omar or Kim or whatever, at the end of the day, it's still my decision to make, right? So like even going out and leveraging other people's money, you have to really sit down and understand, all right, what's my safety net? Do I actually have a backup plan? Right? Because I think most people that over leveraged other people's money, right, put themselves in a huge hole, right? They don't have and they don't have an exit strategy. And I think that's a really hard thing to do, because I guess people are just living like paycheck to paycheck, right? So
you have to earn the right.
What would be like a reasonable safety net to have? Like, is it X amount of months saved up? Is it, you know, a co-signer? Is it something else? Is it another business, right?
In what sense though? Is that to quit your job, to be free, to?
No, I guess just to operate in a position that's not desperation, right? Because like, let's say if you are putting all your eggs on this one property deal, or all your eggs into funded trading, right? Because that I went down that route, and I know a lot of people are struggling with that right now. You could see the stats, right? Like I think TFT published somebody spent like $60,000 in funded challenges and didn't pass a single one, right? In my opinion, that's desperation, right? So unless that guy can afford losing $60,000 in a month, you know, does he have a backup plan, or is that guy just like?
Okay, backup plan. Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think I have an answer for that. But before we quickly go on that, I want to touch on the wife thing one more time. Is another great thing about the other significant half is they would know us like we don't know ourselves. They spend all their time with you. They know your habits. They know how you're thinking, and they're able to give you a perspective that you understand and know, but you're just not thinking right because you're either impulsing or your friend's influence, or you see one side, but she'll bring you to see the other side. So I think that's really important. But now going on to
so before we go into this, I wanted to bring up though, like, because Omar was talking about Tom Dante, and something that he said that really resonates with me a whole lot is like, the people that make the most money don't need the money.
Yeah. That's true. And ironically, I make way more in trading when I don't need the money. Like, just because you just don't care about it anymore, and you're just so much more free. And that actually now brings it into this point of the backup. And I actually just spoke about this on Albs, is the FU money. Like, how many people, yet again, if you go through and look at your expenditure, where we started off earlier in this conversation, like how much you spending, how much is going out, like, do you know everything to the T? If not, and then you get to a level, it's like you ask your PA and you ask the report, like, where is everything that you can know. Now your freedom is the same thing. Like, really and truly, what do you need to be free at the bare minimum? I'm not talking about FU money or being a twat or leaving luxury. That's another discussion. We're talking about the low level, right? What do you need to survive at the bare minimum and still be content. Let's just say right now in your life, you enjoy doing golf, or you don't enjoy even just doing nothing. You just like watching these pods 24/7. If your bare minimum to be able to earn enough to enjoy pods is your rent, the food on your table, and whatever some bills are, and some amenities like the gym and all that kind of stuff, have that at least 6 months leeway to 12 months leeway is a very, very, very good level. How many people really have 6 to 12 months? And why do I say 6 to 12 months? Because 6 to 12 months will give you more than enough time to make that money again. So let's just say it costs you 2 grand to live for per month. Like literally, that is your bare structured minimum. Then that's 12K, right? Over a 6-month period, or 24K in a year's time. Okay. Then the goal for you is you just need to make 24K in 1 year. And then you're good for another year. And then whatever you do with the rest of the time is up to you. And that really and truly is actually the basics and the fundamentals of freedom, because you're doing what you want, when you want, with who you want, and how you want. I'm not dictated by someone else. I'm not dictated by anyone's time. I don't have to report to anyone. I don't have to do any dumb shit. If my job is shit, I got 6 months to find another job. You know what I mean? Like, you've got to understand these very simple, basic health, wealth things to protect yourself and just live the best life. Like, your life doesn't need to be dictated by Lambo or Rolex or anything.
Yeah.
Like, these things are great. Like,
It's so hard right now because everybody sees that, and that's like top, I would say not even top 1%. That's like top 0.1% that of people that can afford something like that. I think if you're earning more than, I think, $40,000 a year globally, you're already top 1%.
Shit,
And I think in the Western world and more developed countries, it's like $40,000 a year, you're borderline poverty, right? But as long as you have a roof over your head, you can put food on the table. You're like Dan was saying, your necessities are met, right? You shouldn't be operating out of a place of desperation.
And it goes on to so what? So now, if you can think about and shift your mindset to think so what, everything else doesn't matter. All right, you want to watch, you get a watch, so what? It tells the time, and it's made out of some metal, and it's expensive. What you fucking do? You go on holiday, you go to vacation, and you spend 10 grand on first class going and spending all this stuff for some Instagram posts. But so what? Like, is that meaningful to you? If it's meaningful to you and you have a story, fine. That's you versus you, right? Me versus me, as that's what my saying, and I love that's cool. That's fine. But the problem is people now are doing this and using debt and the basics of this conversation, other people's money for this dumb shit, not other people's money to make money. Like, and that's not other people's money. Just like you're coming to me to ask. Bank credit cards, these are still other people's money. This is the bank's money. You're leveraging debt in a negative way. You need to leverage debt in a positive way.
Yeah. Right now, everything that's pushed at you is like a consumer, you know, as a consumer, we're the biggest consumers in the world. It's like, you have to find a way to reprogram yourself to avoid some of that. Yes, it's okay to experience every once in a while and indulge in some of that stuff, but if you really want to get ahead, you have to, I guess, reprogram your mind and stop thinking about all that stuff that really doesn't matter at the end of the day, right? Because I could buy the jewelry, I could buy the car, I could buy the watch, you know, I could buy a bigger house, but at the end of the day, it's not bringing that fulfillment to you, right?
Unless you earn it. So that's another level of the next step, is you have to truly earn it. Like, if you want that watch, if you're using a credit card and debt for it, that's not earned. But if you've made 100 grand and the watch is 5 grand, by far you've earned it. Right, and that's 100 grand net that's come back into your pocket, not 100 grand turnover and then you've netted 10K profit because you're spending 50% of your profit. I'm talking about, you know, real allocation of this. So, you know, you have to earn the right and everything. And as an individual, as a man, and whatever you want to call yourself, it's just when you earn things, the fulfillment is another level. Like, yes, okay, cool, look, I got this, but you know yourself, like, you had to credit card that or do whatever. It doesn't matter what other people say. They can congratulate you, they can be like, oh, what do you fucking do? But you yourself, is important to understand yourself, love yourself, and put yourself first and look at the bigger picture. Because if someone's your friend just because of watch, they're not really your friend. They want, you know, you want to set yourself up for success and really
I think my biggest thing with this conversation is before you leverage other people's money, right? You have to learn how to make money first.
That's important.
even at the smallest scale, right? I see, you know, I'm sure there's a ton of people that were getting into houses, high interest rates. They're trying to Airbnb it as like their first home, and they're taking on too much. Like, do it on a small scale first. And like we talked about this, Dan, right? Do it on the smallest scale as possible first. If you can't do that consistently over a 6 to 12 month period, or if it's another business, maybe 2-3 years,
Mhm.
you have no business trying to scale up, right?
Yeah.
Because if you try and scale up a net negative business, it's just gonna get more, when you
Yeah,
scale that
we
up,
go
it's just the
downwards.
numbers are just bigger,
Yeah,
it's just
yeah.
more net
Proof of
negative.
concept. You
Like,
need proof of
yeah,
concept.
extremely simple concept.
It's funny, like listening to you guys too, like talking about everything in terms of like business, how it all like it really relates to every aspect of life, even trading. And it's like when that old cliche, like how you do one thing is how you do everything,
Right.
but it really does
Mm.
apply because at the end of the day, man, like if whether you're someone who's in business, whether you're someone who's in trading, it's all the same principles, right? The
Mhm.
discipline to make sure to make the right decisions, the discipline to not even like, um overcommit to a specific thing so that way you don't go bankrupt, whether it's in business or you blow your account,
Mhm.
and it's all the mindset shifts that a lot of people have when it comes to money. It's needed, right? Whether you're trading, whether you're running a business, all these same attributes and these same skill sets, they translate, and I think that's why typically like people who become, even if someone who goes through like trading and doesn't become a profitable trader, however, if they instill those proper habits, because trading at the end of the day, you could have the best psychology, but there's also skill set associated with it, right?
Yeah.
There's a performance that's has to be done. However, like if you get garner those skill sets, you can leverage those skill sets and then you utilize it in a different sense and be successful in that way. And it's in order to kind of like allocate different resources or leverage other people's money. It's like you guys said, you have to first be able to make money yourself. Um, and the thing is, like, trying to get investors, obviously you'll need results, but Dan brought up a great point where it's like people can get direct access to other people's money, aka the banks, using credit cards, then putting themselves in deep holes because of that.
Mhm.
And if someone's not careful, leveraging other people's money can actually be seen as a net negative versus a net positive, right? So,
Exactly.
like, Dan, do you have any principles to go by when someone wants to leverage, whether maybe someone has success in trading, but now they want to take it to the next level, right? Maybe they're not
Mhm.
interested in like the firms and maybe they want to seek investor capital. Is there like a kind of a bullet point checklist that someone should go through before they seek
That's a
something,
great
like whether
question.
it's in real estate, whether it's in, seeking investors? Should they have
Mhm.
a checklist of items like, hey, you know what? Once I accomplish these checklists, I'm going to go ahead and I think I have the proper credentials, have the
Mhm.
proper resume to go ahead and approach investors?
Yeah, so first and foremost, proof of concept. We've already established that. Like, what's the point of getting more money if you can't even make money, right? Like, everyone has $1 million idea. Cool, go make 1 million then. Once you've made 1 million, then we'll put more money in it. Like, why am I going to give you 1 million to make $1 million idea if you haven't even made it? Like, that makes no sense. Number one, proof. Yeah, it's so funny, but it's so true. So, number one, proof of concept. And number two is be free yourself. If you are free yourself, you're not, which ties into number three, reliant on this money and other people's money. Because if you're reliant on this million coming in, that just tells me you're a little bit too risk adverse to it and you're relying on my money for what? Like, hold up a sec. You shouldn't be in that position. You should be in a position where you're liquid, you're free. It's like, okay, I'm very, very, very fat right now. I'm not running lean. How can you make me fatter and then grow from there? Because if I need those profits because I need to use this to pay for this and then this, you're just operating too lean, which really is you got to understand like how you're going to operate. Be free, don't rely on the money, and just take it pretty slow. Don't bite off more than you can chew as well. So
Mhm.
if you can understand and collate all of those 5 things, I think it's really important to have that. And then other than that, take, if you've got the proof of the pudding, this then goes on to the other type of people, is take the risk, take the OPM, like go for it, leverage it, because there are two sides of it. There are people who would take the other people's money or leverage way too easily, and there's other people that wouldn't leverage when they can leverage. So you have to have that balance in between them.
Yeah, so I think that's a great way to end this podcast series. I want to thank you guys for hopping on.
Thank you,
Shout out
bro.
to Skilled Funded Traders. If you guys haven't already, check them out. Sign up to the Skill Challenge, some of the lowest profit targets in the industry. And we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you.
Peace,
Thank
guys.
you, Dan. Yeah.